adding UI components to CakePHP. I am Marc Grabanski, and I do a lot with UI. I do UI development for Fortune 100 companies in my day job, and then I do a bunch of CakePHP all night long. so I just wanted to show you a demonstration of a couple of UI components that I've been working on, and just kind of how to integrate them. I'm just going to start off with the demo. So I originally intended this to be online, but since I can't get online, I wanted you guys to all have a login and upload stuff and interact with it, but that's all right. So anyway, this is the new design of my site, and I'll have this demo application on marcgrabanski.com/code/CakeFest. Oh wait, I don't know if you guys want to write this down, but so if you guys want to write that down, tell me if anyone needs more time, but to write it down. So you can go and look at that after, and I'll actually have a link to download the application, because I want you guys to have this as just a template, as a base, so that as I describe how I'm using it, that you can actually go home, download it, use it yourself, and if you got any better ways to do things, and maybe you can modify it, check it into Subversion, and we can keep in touch that way, and make this thing a nice, actually, starting ground for people. So I'll take you into it. First is the login. So it was really pretty simple. This is an Ajax login. I can here. Let me pull up the application. And can someone tell me when I have like 10 minutes left? That'd be great. All right, so here's the login. I've just got included the request handler, which is how Cake knows whether it's an Ajax request. So here I'm just saying, if it's Ajax, I'm gonna set the session and return true, else I'm gonna return false. So when I try to identify the user. So pretty simple on the server-side code. And you'll see as we try to log in, without credentials, it says nope. And you'll see that our response was not false, but whatever. Doesn't really matter. So anyway, I added this kind of shake effect. That's in the new FX library. So let's pull up the login controller. All right. So this is my code on the client, which is just before submit, we're gonna fade the message out. So I'm creating this Cake UI component. What's that?
Blow up the font a little bit.
Okay, sure. I don't even know how to do that. View.
Like Control Plus or something.
Yeah, on Mac it's Control-Shift-U.
Control-Shift-U? No, that didn't do it.
Control Shift Plus.
Settings, probably. No. No, that's not a good one.
Do you have a scroll wheel?
Yes.
Control and use the scroll wheel.
No, that doesn't work either.
I don't know if we can.
You can't in the eText editor?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I have it open right here. I'll take a look.
Okay. Anyway, I've never had to enlarge the font size. So we could bump the resolution down. No. So basically, I'm just saying, .cake.message div grabs in this Cake plugin that I'm making that I want to keep building out to interact with Cake. It's just cake.message div is the little message that shows up. So it's just saying fade that out first, and then when the call comes back, if it's successful, if the response equals true, then we're going to redirect. Else, we're going to use the effect library. That's with jQuery effects, and that's going to be released in the couple weeks or something, which is that shake. And then cake.message, sorry, you could not validate your username and password. And then where you wanted the message appended. So this is all, custom plugin that I'm developing. So as you see, shakes and it says sorry. So let's log in successfully. As you can see, the request was successful. It returned true, and we got dumped into the home page. So that's cool. So that's a Ajax login, which you could obviously handle that however you wanted. You could. So all right. Now I wanted to show you also uploading photos with Swift Upload. So as you saw, there was a form that flashed before Swift Upload was applied. So you can do this without JavaScript. You can upload one image at a time. Else, the form gets replaced with Swift Upload. And so let's say I select the default pictures because they're awesome. And as you see, it will give us a status bar and generate the thumbnails automatically for us. And if I go to view all photos, you can see that the photos are in the database. So this is using two kind of custom things I built. One, on the server, I built I refactored the image. I don't know if you guys have seen that image component. I refactored it from like 400 lines of code down to 200, and then I added more functionality, and so it's like 230. So I should release that, but it's going to be in the demo application. So the components. So we have the Swift Upload component, which I'm just using to handle the errors. And let me take you into the Photos controller. So we're in the upload mode, and you'll see that here. This is what I originally intended PowerPoint for, believe it or not. Because I can just grab the code and get rid of the stupid, yeah. Wow. Why is it adding?
You're at the end of the list from above.
Here. There we go. So that works, I think. There we go. So if it's Swift Upload, which is the component I use to check, then save it, and then I'm echoing the thumbnail path with the router. Else, if there's an error, we're going to echo the error image. And then make sure that the debugger stuff doesn't show up. So, and then I'll take you into the, here's the media behavior I wrote. Let's actually look at this. Okay, so in the media behavior in your model, you can say, I want a regular image with the max width and max height of that. I want a small image that's max height and max width of 250 and a thumbnail of 100 by 100. And then that's what we're using in the router we're passing, the thumbnail. So we can see on the server here, in the media, you can see, here's our photos. We got the small images, the thumbnail images, and the regular size. They came from this definition. So that's a pretty slick way that you can take the Swift upload component that I wrote, and then the media behavior, and just kind of put it in one fluid, solid kind of thing. So again, that'll be up for download, so you can use that. And there's one more component of this that I just want to, if you're planning on implementing your own, that I wanted to make sure you guys know about is how it deals with sessions. And so it's weird because Flash acts like it's its own browser. So when you go to upload your photos, the session isn't active. So you can't tell what user is logged in or anything like that. So you have to set the session ID which I do. I don't know. Probably in the view. I don't know anyway. I send the session ID out to be posted with the upload, and then I start it here, and that way I can access what user is actually uploading photos. So otherwise you can't tell what user is actually uploading. So that's a pitfall that I address in the before filter. Just for reference. I'll probably put a tutorial about all this stuff online. So any questions about that, or did that make sense at all?
Yes.
Yes. What's that?
When you selected all the images to be uploaded, and then Swift Upload starts uploading them, and then underneath the browse button, the thumbnail started appearing.
Yeah.
Was that your code that was generating the thumbnails and applying them?
Yeah.
That's what Swift Upload was.
The media behavior that I wrote, when you enter something into the database, like a file name, it actually, when you're trying to upload a file, it takes a file name, puts it in the database, and then you saw how we configured thumbnails and smalls and stuff. It uses GD image library to generate those thumbnails, dumps it into a folder, and then the upload controller returns the image path right here. So that's how we're echoing the image path, which is small underscore, and then the actual name of the photo. So that's how it's generating the thumbnails, and then you're sending back, here's the path.
And then Swift Upload just grabs that and then renders it.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah. So in the handler, right here in the handler, we have add image and then the server data. So, which the add image appends the image to the div. So.
Does it work if you just set that the path into the view and enter from the controller?
What's that?
You're anchoring the image into the controller, so it's still working with the just set it into the view it's very.
Sure. Yeah, you could set it into the. I mean, the thing is that the JavaScript is getting back the response of the path, and then it's generating an image with the path. So if you wanted to set that to a variable and then
This is the change actually in the drawing. I just wondering if there's a reason for it.
to send back the path of the image.
Yeah, well, you're echoing it straight out there.
Yeah.
From the drawing, I just wondering if there's a reason for it.
Um,
Rather than saying the view and looking at it from there.
yeah, I suppose you could just, whatever the file name is, display it. But I think the reason I did it was because of the error. If there was in the controller, it's if there's an error, then being able to handle that. I mean, so I suppose you wouldn't have to have, if it's successful, generate a thumbnail, but you would probably have to say, if there's an error, send this message, and then in the JavaScript you could handle, well, if it's an error, say error. You could do it there. So it's probably better to do it there. You're right, but you got to do what you got to do, and you do it in like a day or something. So the last piece I wanted to show you is a multi-step Ajax form, and I haven't completed this, or I haven't, it's not completely complete, but it's you can get the idea, you can get the gist of it. So let me just take out the JavaScript and show you what the application normally does. So if the user, in my account, if I want to add a new resume, this is what it's going to normally do. Submit, you have the typical post back in CakePHP. And then when it's in the database, then you get to the next page. So what I want to do is make this Ajax. So as we see in the database, there's one record. So if I make the JavaScript activated, I just activated this piece of JavaScript, which I can put into PowerPoint. Ugh. So this is the JavaScript that basically hijacks the form. And so we're going to use the validate plugin, which is Yorn's validate plugin for jQuery. And we're going to say the error class is error. And we'll check it on Blur. And when you submit it successfully, we're going to do, grab the form, use an Ajax submit, which is using the form plugin for jQuery. And on success, this is my hackish, just if it's false, alert no. Otherwise, we're going to append the response. And so we're going to grab the form div, which is typical in Cake. There's a div that wraps the form. We're going to grab that, and then we're going to append the response. And so we're going to send in the response, which came from, and we're going to append in the response, we're going to say the first form. So that way, we don't really have to mess with the controller logic. It's pretty cool. Nate programmed this just yesterday. So if Cake knows that it's an Ajax request, and it does a redirect, which is how we got to the second form, it will actually just grab that next action and output it without the layout. So I'm just taking the next action, and I'm just saying only grab the first form and append it to the form div. And my plugin is saying doing the logic, which says basically fade out the first step form and fade in the second step form. And then it also takes the ID of the record and appends it to the first form. So you'll see that in action. So we enabled the JavaScript. So let's go ahead and reload this page here. Okay, so this should be, you can see that's using, the live validation. As I type or don't type, the error messages are going to go away. That's what the live validation plugin does. So now we submit this, and you'll see that the next step just got returned. So here you can see the next step was rendered. And then my plugin says, in it, you say the response. And I only want to grab the form from the response and display it. So now we have the second form. And let's look in the database. You'll see there's another record in there. I believe it's this record. So now we can go back and say, whatever. Say, cool resume. Cool.doc. And I went to cool school, and I'm to school, cool for school. There we go. So you'll see now we're on step 2 again, and look in the database. And there is the new data, which is pretty awesome because this kind of allows you where you're not actually messing with the form logic at all, or the back-end logic, and you're just hijacking with the plugin and saying to grab the next step, the form from the next step, and overlay it over top. And currently, I was actually working on this morning, and I realized this isn't a good idea because I was actually coding reattaching the next validation because you can set in your form with these class required. Let me show you. So in your view, to enable the Ajax validation with Jorn's plugin, all you have to do is say required, MS Word, whatever. And so you can put all your rules, and you can make custom rules, and you just enable it with the class. So all we'll have to do when the next form comes back is we reinstantiate the validation plugin and then handle the errors that come back from the server, which is what, again, I started coding. I'm like, okay, I know enough about life that things don't always go exactly how you want them to. So I'll finish that out and put it on the demo site. So I think that'll be cool because then you can just, you can have these multi-step forms, and all you have to do is hijack it with the plugin, and you'll have these cool back and forward, Ajax things that you can do whatever you want to. So that's essentially the logic behind adding custom UI. Is you want to just build out your CakePHP application like normal. Just build it, and then include one of these plugins. You'll see in my code. All right, I've got all these plugins. So you just include one of these plugins, like say I think my Cake UI thing will be dependent on the form plugin and validate. So you just include the form, validate, and jQuery, and you can just include these plugins and just hijack whatever Cake normally outputs. and do it that way. So I think that's the pattern that especially if you want to release your code to the public and allow people to consume this stuff like I really want to do, just whatever Cake does by default, hijack that and add behavior to it. And I think that'll really help the community. Does anybody have any kind of pain points to what they've done or experiences? What's that?
I had a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
I've never done form validation with JavaScript because I always thought that if somebody wanted to, like for instance, like a contact formula,
Yeah.
that'd be a great spam target. So somebody would create the fields and post it to the necessary URL, and JavaScript wouldn't catch that.
Right. So this is great for that because with Jorn's plugin, you can instantiate the JavaScript validation with classes. So like class required, class MS Word, class whatever. I think there's like, max whatever, max int, or there's like all these different packaged validation methods. So you can instantiate the JavaScript validation with classes. And then on the server side, you can do whatever you want. You can do the complex, validation, the thorough validation. That's how I recommend doing it because you don't really want to, you don't really want to give everyone like, this is how I'm validating my data, as you said. So if you just, so with this method, you would instantiate the JavaScript live validation with class required, class whatever, and then on the server you can do whatever sort of validation you want. Does that make sense?
So no, I just want to make sure. So you're recommending that if you to do this, you do validation on both the front end and the back end?
That's what I recommend because, especially in the environment that I'm in, with Fortune 100 companies, they never want their client or their server-side validation logic exposed. So I think, like Felix's thing, I think he just grabs don't you just grab the validation from the model?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's grabbing the rules from the model and just doing it that way, which is you're coding once. But I think that, I've talked about it with the team internally, and they don't like the fact that the server and the client would expose the server logic ever. So. But it's good for quickly adding. So it definitely plays. What's that?
How difficult would it be to do Ajax looking for validation and show the actual validation?
That's what I plan to do. So that in the controller, when it sends back errors. Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't matter whether it's a JSON or XML, but yeah, it would return an array of validation errors, and then you could inject that. I believe so, but I can't speak to that. I mean, this is, getting the actual validation errors from Cake is essential, I think, for actually making this work like in a production app. So I would never recommend using this in a production app in its current state. But all I'm trying to give you is the logic on if you want to program this yourself. It would just kind of show you how you would do that.
Do you have plans to handle the case of user bailing, for instance, for your multi-part form? What goes on the second part, when you have 5-part form, and what required field after the second part?
Yeah, I have to, for the application that I'm building, I have to do that. If the user bails, I want when the user logs in that and they try to edit the record, that they're put to the exact step that they left off. Or at least, if they're on the first step, that all of that's populated. So I think that's essential before the release of my app, which I plan to release in a month or two. So plan to
something at least will be released to the public before launch. So,
One quick question. I saw you were storing your, media files on Save the Library. How are you setting this up?
Cake actually has a media view plugin. I don't believe, hey, with your media view plugin, are you planning on implementing caching?
Eventually, it should allow you to do caching already. What's that? Hold on one second.
Well, anyway, he's got the media, you'll see here.
The media view class basically lets you put your media anywhere outside of the web root.
Yeah, so I've got this function called display. Here, I'll do the old, really cool PowerPoint. No, there we go. So, okay, so here's the media view plugin. How you instantiate it is this view media, and then you want to turn debugging off, as I found out, and then you set the path, the extension of the file name, and the ID of it, and then you can say download equals true, and then it would actually prompt the browser to download it if you hit that. But with displaying images, obviously you don't want download false. What's that?
It can also, like if the download, if you do force it to download,
Yeah.
and you're interrupted, it'll allow you to pick up your download too. Because when you're passing download, it sends a header that your the content length and the content range too. So if you get an interruption, it'll determine that too. We've done it with
that's nice.
some
So is caching implemented? I mean, is there a cache equals true or cache?
Cache control is private and false on it, basically. And one of the things is, like, when I first implemented it, there was a project we didn't want any, like, proxy servers or anything caching it, because it works off of permissions.
Sure.
If a user doesn't have access to the media, it's not going to allow them to view it.
Sure. So you never want to cache.
You don't want to cache.
Yeah, you don't want to cache authenticated content. So what? So how would you instantiate caching then with the media view?
I had to go in here and modify it. I thought I had it in here where it would allow
Feature
caching.
should get.
What's the actual
The view is empty. So you just, this way you can set the path. So I've got media, and then I just extract the user media with the user ID and then their photos. So it's pretty cool. You can just store, that's where I recommend. So you could store, WMVs or, flash video or whatever kind of files you want, and then what you can use display to grab it, and you can upload that even with Swift upload. So this way that I'm doing it, and with the media, you could in the media behavior you could handle all sorts of media. So like we set up, image max width, max height, you could do whatever kind of thing you wanted to do with video, just to extend that media file. So, pretty happy with it. So, anything you guys want to add, or anybody have problems or have a success story integrating UI? So,
Yeah.
no? Not that you want to share? Because I had such a pain with that session stuff with the Swift upload. It was, I banged my head on the wall for 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours. It was really stupid because it's in the documentation. But
Do you also
look
have
at
to,
that.
do you also have to set session security to be doing, since you have a different user?
Yeah, that's another thing. Because Cake wants to generate a new session with every time you hit a page or anything, a new session ID, you have to set security to medium. But can you set security to medium for per function? Or no?
Yeah, well, it depends. Some of the recent changes I did with session, you can basically set the session ID in the before filter and it'll continue using that same session.
Okay, because that's what I'm actually doing in the controller, which is, here, let me,
In a before filter?
yeah. And that's how I'm doing it, actually. Yeah, I think actually mine is set to high, believe it or not. Yeah, which probably because of your change. Yeah, because I think I had it at medium because everybody was having that problem, and then I was like, let me just see if it works on high. So,
Any media before any request to server, whether it was media or, anything other than just a regular URL request would cause problems with the sessions, and that should be fixed now too.
yeah, so here I'm saying because of the form P session ID or whatever with Flash, this should be more secure. I don't recommend doing it. I mean, I guess someone would have to help making it more secure, but because Flash is the only thing that sends the params of form P session ID, I just say if it's set, then set the session ID to that.
Actually, you don't even need to call session ID or session start like that. Is that in your before filter?
Yeah, this is in the before filter.
Just do this session ID, like it.
Wait, let me type it out actually. So I could do like this session ID equals.
No, don't even do equals. Just put the parentheses. It's a function call.
Oh, it's a function.
Yeah. It'll return the session ID.
So like that?
That's all you have to do.
So this session ID that, and then it'll start the session automatically.
Yeah, if you pass it an empty value, it'll return the session ID. You can do ID equals this session ID, and if ID set, it'll return it. If you pass it, it's actually going to set it.
And guys, I don't know too terribly much about security, so is there a better way to do this?
I don't know, it's just if you don't check which file is uploaded and there's something like XSS or you upload PHP and then the session ID is exposed, so I mail your session ID to me, and so this is very dangerous to store the PHP session inside of a form. So I never.
Well, yeah, this is after you're authenticated. You're actually logged in, and you're on the upload page. So you have to somehow tell the Flash component what the session ID is, because else, how do you know whether that user is authenticated or not?
Don't pass the session ID like you're doing in your form.
Yeah.
Just use the session ID method directly inside this session ID.
So
because the session ID is already going to be in the cookie, and
so
this
it'd
is
be
in
like
your
function upload.
No, he's doing it through Flash.
Oh,
so it's
sorry.
not in the cookie.
Upload.
He's doing it through Flash, so it's not in the cookie.
And then it
Does
would
he have a
be
cookie?
something
He's
like,
got the session ID somehow because he's actually setting it.
Yeah, he's passing in the form because it's not in the cookie.
It has to come to the form because Flash doesn't work.
yeah. So yeah, the only way that Flash can send data to would be through posting, wouldn't it? Or how would you set? Because the Flash is actually recognized as like a separate browser. So how would you pass the session ID to the Flash component to reinstantiate it? I think that's the only way that I can possibly see doing it.
You can actually turn off the browser, the user agent. You can turn the user agent off, and the session should still, retain. Can you get that session ID in Flash before it's even, without having to pass it back to the browser. If you know that session ID, just write the code, this session ID, the method, and see if that same session ID is gonna be retained coming from Flash.
So if I do that,
That will return, if you do ID equals this session ID and ID has already been set, it's gonna return this, or ID
so
will
do I have
actually
to do,
do the session underscore, and it's just a session, or session ID, right? Yes.
okay, so I do that in the upload function, but then how does the Flash component actually know that? How is that tied to the Flash component?
I think
What
it's
is the-
from, you're saying that if
Hey,
he
guys, can
puts
we,
the session
can we
ID
move this to maybe the
Tom,
bar
Tom, are
afterwards?
you ready?
Um,
Okay, cool.
Cool.
All right, yeah, that's fine, no problem. And if you guys know a better way to do that, I'm all for it.
What was your URI
What's that?
again?
Okay, so
URL
Okay, here, let me.
slash CakePHP or what?
Yeah, it's Marc, Grabanski. Actually, I'll probably have it on my blog, but, so if you get to this URL, you'll be able to find it, but it's actually code/CakeFest
Ah, okay.
08. So that's the URL. So, yeah. So has everybody got that? You got it? Okay, cool.